بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. This lecture talks about of productivity. How can we define productivity? As a measure of the effective use of resources, usually expressed as ratio of outputs divided by inputs. We are done with the quantitative part. Now talking about the definition, effective use of resources. By defining the two criteria of management, effectiveness and efficiency, we have related the effectiveness to achieving objectives and goals and linking efficiency to good utilization or usage of the available resources. So by this ratio, outputs divided by inputs, we combine between both of effectiveness and efficiency. So the definition focuses on being or as a measure for effective use of resources and efficiency. Productivity means simply getting the maximum output from a specific amount of inputs. It shows the capability of different production factors or elements to achieve a specific level of output relative to inputs used in the production. Productivity is applicable for all organizations, whatever, it's a very important concept, whatever the type of outputs of the organization, producing product or providing a service, whatever the type of goal to be achieved, profit-oriented or non-oriented organizations. Now we will discuss some of the misconceptions of productivity. Number one, productivity is not equivalent to, there is a difference between production and productivity, because we cannot depend on the production and the output of organization. We cannot depend on it only in evaluating the management process of any system, but we have to know the used elements of the production. Saying that our production has been increased to some level, this cannot indicate how good we are or how productive our system is, since we haven't mentioned the rate of increase in the used inputs to produce such an increase in the amount of outputs. The outputs of the production may increase without any increase in productivity. To analyze or to discuss these misconceptions means that we have to differentiate between both concepts, the misunderstood concept and productivity, to prove that they are completely different. So by this, if we can prove that production may increase without any increase in productivity, this means that they are different concepts. They are not the same. So you can increase your production, but using higher percentage of inputs to achieve such an increase in your outputs or in your production. By this, the productivity has not been increased, although the production has been increased. So these are different concepts. We have also to take into consideration any change in prices when we evaluate the output, because there may be a misleading increase due to prices increase, which means if we are about to evaluate our outputs using the monetary value. The ratio may indicate increase, but it's a misleading conclusion because this increase has been achieved because of an increase in prices, not an increase in the actual productivity. So there is a misleading impact for increasing prices that can indicate an increase in production or output or productivity ratio without actual increase in the productivity, such as the prices of petroleum. Production measures total quantity of production produced, amount or number of units produced, while productivity measures amount of outputs or value of outputs divided by amount of used inputs in terms of quantity used or cost of used inputs. So productivity is a ratio, but production is just a number of units used. Productivity is not equivalent to productive capacity. What do you mean by productive capacity? The organization cannot be considered as being productive only because it produces the maximum amount of output within shortest period of time, while these products are rejected by customers. It's another factor related to customer satisfaction or the marketability, the ability to market these products. It's not a matter of how many units have been produced, amount of outputs, or internal assessment of the value of outputs, regardless of the ability to sell or the perception of the customers to accept these products and buy them. Productivity is not equivalent or does not represent only labor. It's a most important factor in production requirements to measure productivity of labor. It's most common, but productivity does not mean only labor productivity, although it is an important resource to measure its productivity, but it reflects the efficiency of all the production factors, all types of resources, labor, equipments and machining or technology, capital, materials, and productivity is not equivalent to profitability. There is a big difference between productivity and profitability. Achieving more profit in an organization does not necessarily mean that productivity is high or has been improved. The profitability measures the financial situation of the organization on the short term, while productivity affects the organization situation on the long term. Another way to differentiate is to prove that profitability can increase without an increase in productivity, or the opposite way. We can achieve an improvement in productivity without achieving an increase in productivity. Does not mean intensifying use or the heavy usage of the available resources, which does not mean working for longer hours or the excessive use of the available resources, human resources or physical resources, not working for extra machining hours, not letting workers to work more time, the intensive or the heavy use of the available resources. What do you think? We think that we must work smarter, not harder. So the heavy usage means harder work, working with more efforts for more time, but productivity does not mean that. Productivity means think about more smarter ways for performing the same job, even in less time, even with less efforts. Productivity is not a measure of efficiency. Okay, but it is a measure of efficiency and effectiveness. How? Okay, efficiency means doing things right. We have discussed these concepts. Which is more correct? Doing things right or doing right things? Right things mean we are performing what we must perform. But doing things right means doing some job, whatever important or not, necessary or not, but doing them in a right way. So efficiency is related to how we perform jobs, how we perform tasks, doing things right. But effectiveness is directly related to what to be done. Are we doing the right things or not? Which one we have to start with? It's a matter of thinking skills. We cannot discuss the how without knowing what. So firstly, we have to answer the question of what to be done, defining the right tasks or activities to be done, and then think how to be done in right ways. So we have to start with the effectiveness and then discuss the efficiency. Productivity means doing the right things plus doing things right, because it divides the outputs by used inputs. So the outputs are related to doing right things that will lead to achieving our predetermined goals and objectives. The usage of inputs or resources in the denominator means doing them in a right way or means efficiency. So the denominator means efficiency and the numerator means improving productivity on the short term may lead to decreasing the size of workforce. Means if we improve productivity, we may downsize our workforce. We may be firing some of the labor force. Is it right? No, because the organization's success and profitability and reinvestment within intermediate and long term will lead to growth, expansion, and attracting more unemployed workers. So this may happen or occur in the short term when we use automation, when we improve labor productivity. This may be understood as being decreasing the size of workforce, or firing some of the workers. But on the intermediate and long term, we will achieve, as a result of improving productivity, we'll achieve more profitability, more reinvestment, more growth and expansion to attract more of the unemployed workers. An increase in productivity could indicate how can we achieve this increase in productivity? Either increase in production volume over a given period. Think about it as a ratio, a numerator and denominator. Increasing in quantity of production within some specific period. So if you are able to increase the amount of output without increasing the input, by this you're improving your productivity. Or producing the same volume in less time. So we'll keep the numerator as constant and then decreasing the denominator. Using less time, using less efforts, using less materials, using less machining hours, whatever you use as a method or a technique or approach to either produce more or to reduce the amount of used resources or inputs. All are approaches to improving productivity. Or produce the same volume with less input in the given time. So either to increase the numerator or decrease the denominator, or produce the same amount, keep the same output, but within less, or increase both of them but in different ways, or decrease both of them but in different ratios or rates. Importance of productivity. We will thus discuss the importance of productivity at two levels. Firstly, the organizational level, then on the national level. Producing larger amounts of units using minimum amounts of inputs or resources, increasing the outputs compared to amount of used of inputs, including time, efforts, materials, machining, whatever, all other resources. This allows product and the organization to be more competitive. Our product will be more competitive and our organization will be more competitive. Higher productivity will lead to specifically production time or effort or material to get down, decreasing all used inputs, okay, or increasing quantity of production or quality of production, okay. So the used inputs, any of them will get down, or the produced outputs, quantity or quality, will get up. Rate of utilization of the available resources will be improved, okay. Idle or wastes or unused capacities or resources will be less, efficiency will improve. Direct cost per unit will be less, since we will use less amount of inputs to produce the same amount of outputs or higher. Indirect cost per unit will go down also. Getting rid of production bottlenecks. These are the rest of the outcome that can be achieved from improving productivity or higher productivity on the organizational level. Getting rid of bottlenecks, which represent the stages of production that has lower capacity than the previous, and the next steps that represents some accumulation of the production, some delay in the process. is called bottleneck. Improving productivity can help to get rid of the bottlenecks, reducing the unused capital in large stocks. You don't have to keep larger amount of stocks without any need, because this represents unused capacity or unused capital. Reducing the wasted time and all the loss of other resources or inputs. Possibility of reducing selling a price and increasing sales. How? As we mentioned, getting rid of bottlenecks, reducing the wastes and scraps will lead to using less amount of resources, less cost of inputs, which means more profits or more profit margin per unit, which allows our organization to reduce our price, compete using prices or lower prices, or using other words from the strategic course, we apply the cost leadership strategy. Strategy of cost leadership means having an advantage in our production cost that allows us to reduce our prices. And when we reduce our price, we can gain more sales and increase our market share, expand the markets, or compete in foreign markets, higher profitability or higher market share, and the renewable source for self-financing and reinvestment. Having more profit allows the organization to self-finance or generate more funds to invest and achieve growth. Better competitive situation as a conclusion. On the national level, productivity increases add value to the economy, improves the added value of the economy, and controlling the prices increase. Controlling the prices means controlling the inflation or reducing the inflation. Increasing level of salaries, having better productivity means we have more revenues, more profits, so we can increase the level of salaries and wages. This will reflect on faster growth rate of national economy, better or higher standard of living for all citizens. Since having more or better salaries and wages and better standard of living, this means that on the social side, we are creating more time for entertainment. So we improve the quality of life of people. So there is some improvement to be achieved on the economic side and the social side and even the health side of all citizens. Having extra money for investment in society and achieving the optimum use of scarce resources that have multi-uses. Finally, providing the basis for a sustainable long-term growth in the. What about the service organizations? Can we measure productivity or manage productivity in service organizations the same way we manage it or we improve it in manufacturing organizations? For sure, no, we cannot. In general, service organizations have lower productivity than manufacturing jobs do. Why? Because service productivity is very difficult to measure. very difficult to measure and consequently difficult to improve. You recall what we have discussed in the production course. You recall what we have studied in the production course in grade 1, differentiating between manufacturing systems and service systems. We mentioned that productivity is easier to be measured in manufacturing because their outputs are standardized or uniform, which make it easier to count them. So we can count the outputs to divide them by inputs and calculate productivity. Compared to the other type of organizations, service organizations, the services provided are not identical, are not the same, are not standardized. So we cannot count number of, for example, examine patients, because each case requires different time of service. So they are not standardized. So we cannot easily calculate the productivity in service organizations. Since it's difficult to calculate or measure, it's difficult to improve or manage. Service jobs may include also another factor, intellectual activities, activities that is or that are not easily assessed or evaluated, and a high degree of variability, not standardized, which makes it different to improve. Manufacturing jobs can easily improve their productivity because they are able to utilize computer-based technology, automation in general, such as robotics, to increase worker productivity. The same for service. Service also can use some computerized instruments or technology to help in improving productivity, but still the outputs are not standardized, which make it difficult to measure or count as outputs. To manage productivity, we need some requirements. Productivity is an effective managerial effort that requires, number one, as the same for any approach for organizational development, we need strategic support from top management, approval and support of top management, then not only the top management, for the other leaders, for the other organizational level management, we need shared common language and managerial culture among managerial leaders all over organizational levels, leaders or managers. An integrated view to productivity. Don't look at partial, getting back to different measurements of productivity, partial productivity measurements and total productivity measurements. Don't look at each separate island isolatedly. Don't look at each of them in a separate way, but look at the productivity as an integrated view, the holistic, long-term handling and managing for productivity cases, measuring and the quantitative view, which means don't depend only on qualitative descriptions of activities or sides of productivity, but quantified or quantitative view to all efforts paid for productivity. Then comprehensive and integrated analysis for all elements of productivity in the organization. Measuring not only productivity, focus on the inputs and outputs. Coordinating and integrating among all management systems and functional systems and subsystems and the information systems. Integration between marketing, production, finance, HR, information system, and so on. Effective development of human forces that make impact and change. Leaders who can lead the change management. You remember the 9-9 pattern of leadership? We need the effective leaders. Effective leaders in all organizational levels. We need leaders that can balance between people and work and know exactly for each or for which situation they can focus in people and for which we can focus or they can focus on work. Behavioral activation towards increasing productivity. Try to reflect all your efforts on behavior of people. Activate the behavioral change regarding productivity, creating and maintaining high level of awareness about quality of services management systems. Coming to the outcomes of improving productivity. Who can get the outcomes? Who can share the benefits of these outcomes? Are they the owners of the project or of the organization, the stockholders or the shareholders only, or the internal workers, the HR, the human resource not the HR department, the human resources, the labor force, or the external customers and buyers and consumers, or the suppliers who or from whom we get our requirements, or the government that regulate the business areas, or the citizens of the society in general, or all of them. Think about how each public, each group can share some of the outcomes of improvement. Coming to productivity measurement, a general rule, whatever you cannot measure it, you cannot improve it, neither improve it nor manage it. So if we cannot measure productivity, we'll never ever manage it or improve it. So measuring productivity is an important step for the analysis, for the follow-up, for the assessment or evaluation, or in general for the whole management process. The manager cannot improve productivity unless he measures it. Since productivity is defined as a measure of the effective use of resources, productivity measures are very useful for what? For tracking and operating the unit's performance over time. So we can evaluate the performance of any organization across time, evaluating the current performance with the previous one and with the targeting one, judging the performance of an entire industry or even the measuring productivity will help the management to improve effectiveness, level of achieving organizational goals, knowing the level of utilization of the available resources to create specific products, efficiency, so it can improve effectiveness and efficiency. It helps in evaluating the organization's effectiveness, ability to compete, staying in business, and being successful in general. Coming to the quantitative part, we have done already with the different measurements of productivity, all partial productivities and total productivities and multi-factor productivities. What about the results of the calculated ratios of productivity? Is it the end? No. We get these ratios to be used in the analysis. Productivity analysis determines, after the comparison internally and externally, we can define the strength and weakness points through determining the productivity gaps. So if we compare the current performance or the current productivity ratios with the historical productivity ratios, we can determine the gap. If we compare the current productivity ratios with the established or predetermined productivity ratios, we can determine the gap. Determining the gap, difference between current and the standard, we have to find out the main causes of deviation. The comparison defines the gap, finding out the gap or the deviation, finding out the main causes of such deviation and reasons or causes of weakness points to find out the basic ways to improve productivity. So based on the results of calculated productivity ratios, it's more important to read these values, to read these results, to get some conclusions about them. The main important points to be concluded from the calculated ratios, determining our strength points, weakness points, which ratios are good enough in our organization and which ratios are weak in our organization, the gap between the required or the standard and the current, causes of deviations, and finding out how to improve or to cover up these deviations or these gaps. Evaluating productivity is an important part of the productivity improvement program because productivity gives an indication to current performance. It discovers the area of weakness improvement is required, as we just mentioned. What are the steps of productivity management? They are the same steps of the management process. Starting with goal or objective or result to be achieved, setting a plan, assigning the required resources to carry out the plan, carrying out the plan or implementing the plan, follow up and controlling, and then corrective action as a continuous process for the feedback. Determining goals or objectives for productivity improvements. What is the required result to be achieved regarding productivity improvement? Determining a set of alternative plans, different options, selecting the chosen one or the most appropriate one or the final plan, then assigning the required resources, starting with the human resource by assigning who will do what. We determine the rules and responsibility of implementing such a plan by answering with what and where. We assign other physical and human resources or authorities to carry out the assigned task or activity. Then implementation, following up, comparing, determining deviation or gap, causes of deviation, corrective action to getting feedback and improve your performance. What are the main determinants of organizational activity? The main factors affecting productivity. They have categorized these factors into 3 categories. The first one is the job-related factors. Some factors related to the job itself, the design of the job, the nature of responsibilities, authorities, relationships, procedures to be followed to perform some tasks for some job. So we have some factors related to job design can affect the performer's productivity. Then some other factors related to the resources required to perform such a job. Maybe we have some shortage regarding the available resources that can be used. Maybe human resources, maybe physical resources, money, materials, technology, or so on, information even. So we have some other factors related to required resources. Finally, even if we have a good job design and enough available resources, maybe the surrounding environmental factors are not encouraging to perform in a good level of productivity. It can affect your productivity positively, negatively. Generally, productivity or outcome of performance is based on human performance and technical factors or technical performance. So the human performance categorized in human factors, and the technical factors can be called technological factors in general or related to technology. Human factors or human performance, to get good performance, good outcome of someone, he has to be, number one, able and motivated, or he can do the work and he wants to do the work. The relationship as any items of a system are multiplied, not added up, because adding up or summation relationship, any very small value item, even approaching zero value, can be covered up by a higher value. So you still get some kind of outputs. Assume, for example, the human performance getting down, decreasing its value until it reaches zero. Assuming that we will add human value plus technical factors value, 10 for technical factors plus 0 for human factors is still adding up. You will get performance with value equals 10. But for any subfactors or elements of any system relationship, the factors are multiplied. Okay, this means that any factor, if its value decreases until it reaches almost a zero, 0 multiplied by any other very high value, the final outcome will be a 0. Technical factors composed of machining, instruments, and methods of performing job multiplied with each other. Coming to the human performance or human factors, it based, as we mentioned, on ability, being able, you can perform a job or not, times the motivation, or if you want to do or not. The ability composed of. To be able to bake a cake, we must have, number one, the knowledge, the information, and the skill of applying this information. So the ability consists of knowledge times skills. Knowledge, having the information, and the skills, knowing how to apply the knowledge or get using the knowledge. A motive composed of attitudes times situations. Okay. Another classification for the determinants of productivity based on internal and external factors. Internal factors includes everything in the organization, all detailed items such as human factors and physical factors, workforce, organization structure, work system and policies, work methods, management methods, leadership, all the factors related to the human being. The physical side includes all items about products, technology, materials, capacities, energy sources, equipment, and so on. Regarding the external factors, divided into organizing rules, work legislations, general policies, organizational relations, and structural factors such as economic system, social system, demographic, or environmental factors. Now, taking another view to classify the factors affecting productivity. We will take each type of resource separately, starting with labor. What are the factors influencing or affecting labor productivity? We have a group of factors that can be controlled by labor and some other factors that out of their control cannot be controlled by labor itself. Starting with factors where labor has no control, out of their control, including material supplies. What if there is a shortage in the required materials to run the job on the machine? He has nothing to do with the shortage of material. The worker has nothing to do. Reliability of design. What if he has defective design, bad design for the product? He has nothing to do with the reliability of design. Production methods out of control. Product variety, which means changing the setup of machines and the workstation in general to prepare or to get prepared for producing a new product. So the more variety of products we have, the more changing time for setup, which means less productivity. It has nothing to do with a wide variety of product to be produced. Reliability of plant, the facility itself, the factory itself, reliability of electricity, of water, other services in general. It has nothing to do with this. New labor. How can the new labor affect productivity? New labor means less qualified workers, lower skilled workers, less information and knowledge they have, which means lower productivity. So the more new labor we have in the factory or in the organization, the lower the average productivity for the whole organization we will have. Factors influencing labor where labor has full control. It's performed or practiced by workers and can be controlled by workers. Starting time. Why we start late? We have to start on time. Stoppage time. Why we finish our work before the leaving time or the stoppage time. Lunch breaks. How long will it take? Scraps due to carelessness. Being careless, so you have more wastes of time, machining time, of used materials, of whatever other resources you can use. Carelessness can increase the amount of wastes. Accidents. Accidents can be caused by different factors, maybe out of control, but now we are talking about the accident that can be caused by controllable factors. Okay? Carelessness of people. Absentees. The higher rate of absence than the regular planned rate. زي التمارض. Okay? تعمد التغيب مدد أطول من المخططة. This can be controlled by labor. Coming to productivity of materials, what are the factors that can improve productivity of materials? Higher yield, getting more outputs of the same amount of used materials, getting materials at lower cost, getting higher value out of used inputs or materials, low waste and scrap, low rejections of finished products, substitution of materials, find some other alternatives materials. Talking about manpower and productivity, all the following policies and decisions and HR subsystems can affect productivity of manpower. Recruitment policy, skill level, knowledge level, behavior, training, motivation, technology, management, all can affect the labor productivity. What about or what kind of relationship that exists between productivity and quality? We have two levels of quality. Conformance to requirements, which means standards of quality based on the production people view, based on the designer view, conforming the output standards with the predetermined standards or aspects or requirements. So this is technical quality or technical view of quality. Coming to more advanced view, fitness for use, which means fitness that has been defined by customer, taking into consideration not only the internal view of the designer or the production people, that they determine the standard and they produce and they are making sure that what they have produced has been done according to what has been planned. All are internal view. Taking the customer view, we have to measure quality as fitness for use, satisfaction of customer, how he considers or perceives this quality. Finally, productivity and quality go hand in hand. A quality defect can neutralize productivity. What does it mean? It means that any increase in productivity can be neutralized or cancelled by any decrease in quality. So unless quality improves the same way as productivity improves, we will never get positive outcomes, because any increase in one can be cancelled by a decrease in the other. Improving productivity steps, starting with productivity measures, determining bottlenecks or critical bottlenecks of operations in productivity, establishing reasonable goals to be achieved, finding out methods of improvement, getting management support, measuring the outcomes, and publicizing the improvements, publishing, announcing the improvements that have been achieved without confusing the productivity with efficiency. How to improve? Since the equation is expressed as fraction, you can either increase the top, the numerator of the fraction, or decrease the bottom denominator of the fraction. To increase productivity, the supervisor needs to increase outputs, reduce inputs, or doing both of them. Achieving the same output from less input are what we have just mentioned as a ratio. Productivity can be improved by improving quality. If the improved quality is the result of reducing the amount of rework or repair to the product or service, improving productivity through improved quality means doing right things in a right way from the first time without increasing the input part of the equation, which means if you get good output or good quality as a result of reworking, repairing, refixing all the output, this means that we are wasting our resources. We are not productive enough. It means doing the right things in the right way from the first time. Finally, talking about cost-cutting strategies, this can be done. We can reduce our cost through increasing output, improving methods of production, reducing the overheads, minimizing wastes, regulating or leveling the workflow, avoiding bottlenecks, and installing modern equipment or technology, training and motivating employees, minimizing tardiness, absentees,